Hey, this is Rick Lilley here over at Fire River Music in Southern Oregon, Grants Pass actually. Small little store over here that there's, if you want to talk to people that have a lot of information, it's a really great place to go. Kurt Orton, the owner, is one of the best setup guys I've ever met in the business. I've been playing for 50 years and playing all over the place. Jeff here from Thomas Alan Pickups has a number of pickups we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to demonstrate the ones for the Strat, which I'm really excited about. Let me just say that I've been playing guitar, as I said, for about 50 years. The first years of which, back in the late 60s and early 70s, I was buying a whole lot of vintage Stratocasters, some Telecasters, but more Strats. And in those days, of course, you had records like, you know, Lilley, Eric Clapton, you had all the Jimi Hendrix, you had Deep Purple, and you had Jeff Beck, and all these different people were playing Stratocasters. They all sound remarkably different. I was always really intrigued with the guitar in a general sense because I always considered it the most versatile. But the issue was when you end up buying them, and even back those days, you know, guitars that are now selling for $30,000, you used to be able to get for $600. And I had many of them. I had many 50s and 60s, as I said, some of which would be, relatively speaking, priceless now. And having lived with them, I find out that in light of their great attributes and how great they were quality-wise and how wonderful they sounded, in a general sense, most people that I was following, whether it was Eric Clapton or whether it was Hendrix, tended to play using only one pickup position. So through the years, Jeff Beck is a mostly bridge pickup guy that sometimes plays on the front pickup in terms of what he does. But by and large, we have a whole bunch of stuff not being used. That to some extent is the fault, I guess when you're making Stratocasters from a Fender standpoint, you're trying to please everybody. You really can't. They just had one basic circuit. They did have some innovations through the years, but by and large, they've had sort of a simple situation, one capacitor. We can talk technical about that at some point. But the benefit of what I have to say right now is that since Fender through the years, for all the great guitars, had identical pickups, 3 identical pickups, they would tend to not balance very well when you're using them through a loud amp. Or, you know, I've used Marshall amps for a long time. I've used Mesa Boogies and Fenders and a lot of stuff. I look for the ability to be versatile with the use of pickups. That is, I don't want to have to do a bunch of pedal stuff. I don't want to have to change channels on an amplifier. I want to be able to manipulate everything basically from an amplifier. That's why I brought my one-channel JCM 800 combo today to demo this, because what I want to say is with one amp setting, you can get some of the most definitive Stratocaster tonalities. People talk about this, and you hear a lot about it in forums and on videos. Stevie Ray Vaughan uses this, Hendrix uses that, Clapton, etc., etc., etc. And a lot of people have gotten to this point where they're just buying pickups sight unseen without knowing what their attributes are. There's a lot to know. And of all the things that I think you should know about the Thomas Alan line is that they are, in general, less expensive than their competitors and are so far better. I mean, I was so excited when I first heard this set. I have 2 of my own Stratocasters that I immediately changed the pickups out of, and I hadn't done any changes in well over 10 years. So let's just say that for me to get to the point where I'm taking a guitar apart and put stuff in it, when I hear it, it's really got to get me going. It's got to excite me. It's not because I get paid to say it. It's because I'm out there playing all the time, and I want my guitar to sound as good as it can and as versatile as it can. I want it to be quiet and noise-free. I want to make sure that it's every pickup sounds good, and I don't want to have to do channel switching and pedal changes to get my guitar to sound good. I use pedals, but I don't want to have the sound of my guitar be basically dependent on what the sound of my pedals are. If you know anything about some of the classic setups, people like Stevie Ray Vaughan would use a clean amp like a Super Reverb. He often used a Dumble as well, but he'd use a Tube Screamer with it, something moderate gain. I'm going to use in the demonstration here a Seymour Duncan pedal, which is a booster that basically makes the pickup sound like it did at a lower volume, up higher, and it still has a lot of the same character. It does boost gain, but it doesn't just So we can talk about the clean sound. But the beauty of this really is that I can turn the guitar down, turn the guitar up. I have a myriad of sounds on all the pickup selections. It's very easy to manage it. There's no little toggle switches and stuff going on. To modify a guitar and put pickups in it probably takes a half an hour. Probably be wise in changing your strings when you do it. But the bottom line is that when you do this, in order to be able to sound like your heroes, or eventually to sound like yourself, and find a sort of a sense of signature in a guitar sound. I mean, there's so many people playing Stratocasters. On one hand, it's hard to not sound like somebody else. I think it's a challenge to sound like yourself. I think that's what I like about these. It's easy to sound like me on these pickups. But when I play this guitar, I'm going to start on the treble pickup. I tend to, just so you know, I turn the treble down on the treble pickup so that it balances with the front pickup for my amp sound. I don't want to have to do much changes on my amp. When I play this, when I turn the treble down, we want to have a sort of a, well, I don't want to say Gibson-y sound, but if I can drop the treble so that it's not too bright, it's nice and full, I can play rock and roll, whatever, big thick sound. And I can get it to be nice and clear also if I turn it down. I have a lot of headroom on this to the point where I can get it to be clear in that mid-range of my volume knob. I use a lot of volume knob. I recommend people should. There's a lot of different sounds in that. But that being said, I can get it to be nice and articulate. That didn't really lower the volume that much. It just changed how thick the pickup sounds. If I turn it up, it gets to be a nice, crunchy lead sound. Down, I have a nice clean sound. That same sound, I still have a whole bunch of reserved treble. Why do I want it? Good question. The reason why I want that is because a whole lot of the best Strat players out there, people like Eric Clapton, Doyle Brommel, of course, Stevie Ray Vaughan, who's not with us anymore, tended to use this position between the middle pickup and the treble pickup. The combination of these two pickups gives that sound that people call quack. The original Stratocaster that this happened on tended to have no tone control for the treble pickup, and the bottom tone control was for the middle pickup, and the combination of the two got the sound that we attribute to Lilley, Eric Clapton. So when I have that reserved treble to brighten this pickup, probably brighter than my own taste to use the treble pickup by itself, but when I use the combination of these two, it goes back to essentially what the same wiring, the same use of it was on an old 50s Stratocaster to get that sound. These pickups do that better than any pickup I've ever used, and I've used many, many. Nice and full and super clear on the top. I couldn't be happier. I usually have to use a compression pedal or some type of something to brighten in order to get that sound before I found these pickups. Either that or I have to configure the amp to be too bright, and it's too bright for anything else I want to do, so I tend to just not use the sound. You don't want that. One of the side benefits, the middle position on a Stratocaster, is something that almost nobody that I know uses. On the Thomas Alan group of pickups, the benefit of it is it's almost like a second flavor of a treble or bridge pickup. It sounds like a good rock and roll sounding thing. I turn it up, real thick. Great for slide. I didn't bring a slide today, but so I can brighten that, and it sounds like nice and full. It's kind of, I mean, usually people think the Stratocasters are thin. They don't have to be thin. They can be clear, they can be distorted, they can be all of it. They can be all of it with this set of pickups right from the volume control knob. That being said, the front pickup, which is, you know, most of the guys playing old Stratocasters that were using clean amps back in the 60s and early 70s tended to use the front pickup for their lead because it was the only pickup selection on the guitar that was full enough to play solos with. So a lot of the people that played Strats back in that era were neck position people, and that's all great. But in a general sense, if you got the neck position to sound bright enough to be clear, the treble pickup was so bright you couldn't even use it anymore. And that was the thing that caused all the entrance on the scene of all the pedals for gain to thicken the sound of this pickup, which is not necessary to do anymore. If I take this, nice clear, pickup. And if I wanted to do Voodoo Child or something like that, that was a Hendrixy type of thing, or the Beck sounding neck pickup, this is just my favorite, frankly. I can play good blues with this. With the treble turned down on the treble pickup, I can go right to it. Go right to chords. Good things, I suppose, about this set, because as I've said, I probably owned 30 late 60s, early 70s Stratocaster, 50s and 60s, I'm sorry, Stratocasters, and it's always the same problem. You have to do a little bit of work to the circuit, which we can talk about with a mod that I have available for this as well. But the first thing you really need when you get a good set of Strat pickups is that you want them to balance so that their outputs are comparable, so that you don't have, you know, from the same amp sound, you blowing your head off with one particular amp setting, or it's too trebly or something like that. You also want it to be not noisy. A lot of Strat pickups that are highly rated, which I have owned, are, to me, just inexcusably noisy electrically. They tend to pick up all kinds of unwanted artifact noise from whatever, you know, when you're playing a club or something. Invariably electrical circuits in a lot of places aren't very good. You need to have real high quality in the pickup components that these are. You want to be able to find your own signature on the sound, and you certainly want to be able to integrate that all together so that ideally from one amp sound you can get everything to work without a bunch of pedals. You want every pickup selection to sound good. And as a result, when you find that, of course, you have versatility. If you use the volume knob, there's a million sounds on these guitar pickups throughout it. So ultimately, that brings us to the value of these pickups. And I'm not going to quote a price on this because it's easy to see that as they become more popular, they unfortunately will raise in price. But there will be links on the videos as to how you can purchase them from Thomas Alan. And if you have questions on the Strat circuit and or these pickups, there's been talk that we may do a little bit more boosted output. At this point, these pickups are comparably output on them stair steps a little bit to hotter wind on the bridge pickup. I was suggesting that we had maybe even a little hotter, just for guys that are more rock than blues. That might be the way you go. But in my opinion, these pickups are perfect for blues and rock in a general sense, and certainly country. We have not only the 59 set, which is what I have in this guitar. There's also one that's called a classic that has flat magnets. Flat magnets, like came later in the American Standard versions, are really liked by a lot of rock players because you can get them closer to the strings, and therefore, you know, seems to have a little bit more output. Frankly, I think that they have their own place. They are also versatile. They are great for clarity, maybe playing on the jazz side, and or harder rock. There's also a couple sets we're going to be talking about in a future video for the Telecasters. One which is the vintage Telecaster. Again, it's a late 50s set. And there's one that's available that has the cover, traditional cover on the Telecaster, or the cover off on the front pickup, which has a slightly different sound. We'll talk about that in subsequent videos. Nice to see you. I'm Rick Lilley, and reach me with any questions on the link that you find on the video. Thanks.